3 bombs, 1 tweet, and suddenly, Pam Bondi is on a warpath with a target locked on a sitting Congresswoman, Jasmine Crockett. There's no indictment, no evidence, just a woman in power trying to silence dissent. It's a showdown, a clash of political worlds, where the stakes go beyond a simple argument. It's about power, it's about control, and it's about the quiet moments when silence speaks louder than words. But before we dive into this story, I want to hear from you. Comment down below, where in the world are you watching from? Let's light up this comment section. And hey, if you love stories with high drama, power shifts, and the kind of moments that leave people speechless, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next chapter in these powerful, untold stories. On this particular morning, the studio feels different. The weight of political animosity hangs thick in the air like the looming clouds above Washington, D.C. The cameras are rolling, and the set looks calm, almost ordinary, but anyone with a keen eye can see the storm brewing. Jasmine Crockett, a woman of poise and purpose, sits in front of a glaring national audience, facing off with Pam Bondi, a woman who once wielded power as Florida's Attorney General and is now wielding words like daggers. What started as an accusation from Bondi, a call to publicly reprimand Crockett for allegedly inciting violence through her statements about Elon Musk and Tesla, has escalated into something far more dangerous. Bondi and her allies, including conservative media, want the world to believe Crockett's words are dangerous because she dared speak out against Musk, a billionaire with the power to wield influence over both politics and the economy. Bondi calls for accountability, but what she's really doing is trying to muzzle the voice of dissent in the name of protecting corporate power. Crockett, on the other hand, isn't backing down. She's not flinching. She's ready to take this battle head-on. This isn't just about a billionaire. This isn't just about Musk's companies. This is about the entire system, the one that rewards the rich, punishes the poor, and silences anyone who dares to speak against it. This is a fight for fairness, for justice, and for the right to protest. The tension in the room is palpable. Bondi, wearing a flawless smile that can freeze a room, sits composed, prepared for a confrontation. But she doesn't know it yet. This won't be a debate. This will be a reckoning. You want to know what I think? I think this country has one set of rules for the rich and another set for those who dare to criticize them, Crockett says, cutting through the tension like a knife. She pauses, locking eyes with Bondi, and then delivers a statement that sets the tone for the entire confrontation. Elon Musk is not a capitalist success story. He's a government-sponsored monopoly, and somehow he's convinced half of America that being rich means being untouchable. The words hang in the air like a challenge, one that Bondi is not prepared for. This isn't just a political disagreement. This is Crockett's reality. This is her world, one where billionaires exploit the system for their own gain while the rest of the country struggles to get by. Bondi shifts in her seat, the tension evident in her expression. But she's not rattled, not yet. She responds, attempting to regain control. You're going after a man who's building the future, creating jobs, innovating. What you're saying is dangerous. But Crockett, unwavering, doesn't flinch. She doesn't raise her voice. She simply asks, jobs funded by government subsidies? Innovation subsidized by the very taxpayers you're now scolding for protesting? Let's stop pretending this is a meritocracy. It's corporate feudalism with better marketing. Bondi opens her mouth to respond, but Crockett isn't done. She keeps pressing. She's not just talking about Musk anymore. She's talking about the system that lets men like him thrive while the rest of the country suffers. The same system that allows the rich to live without consequences, while anyone speaking out against them is vilified and silenced. Crockett, ever the strategist, shifts the conversation with surgical precision. I told people to protest peacefully. I told them to consult lawyers. I told them what this country used to call civic engagement before billionaires bought the dictionary. The words land like blows. Bondi can't counter them. Instead, she leans on her own talking points, trying to pull the conversation back to the issue at hand, the supposed violence of the protests against Tesla dealerships. But Crockett won't let her. You want to talk about violence? What's dangerous is the billionaire threatening a sitting member of Congress while the Department of Justice stays silent. That's what's dangerous. The air in the room shifts. What was once a debate about words now feels like a high-stakes courtroom battle. Bondi, once the prosecutor, is now the defendant, and Crockett is dismantling her argument piece by piece. Finally, Crockett delivers the mic drop moment that will reverberate through political discourse for days. If the DOJ wants to make retribution their mission statement, I'm not stepping back. I'll meet them in the courtroom, on the House floor, in the streets, if I have to. She pauses, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. Bondi, seemingly stunned, has no immediate response. The battle has shifted in an instant. What was a confrontation about protest rhetoric is now a battle about the very nature of power and control in America. As Crockett finishes her point, the silence in the studio is deafening. Bondi, realizing the shift in momentum, is left to gather her thoughts. But it's too late. The conversation has moved beyond her ability to control it. The real story here isn't just about a feud between two women. It's about something bigger, something more dangerous. This is a fight for the soul of America, a country where power and wealth have been allowed to consolidate in the hands of a few, while the rest of the nation is left to fight for their rights. And Crockett isn't done. She's just getting started. Crockett's words hang in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. She doesn't pause, doesn't wait for applause, and doesn't back down. Bondi shifts in her seat, trying to steady herself against the surge of Crockett's unflinching logic. This isn't a debate about words anymore. It's a battlefield where Crockett's every sentence strikes with precision. Bondi's attempt to steer the conversation toward the idea of violence feels weak in comparison. When Crockett speaks again, her voice is cool, measured, but each syllable carries the weight of conviction. Of course I told them to protest peacefully. I've said it again and again, and I say it now because I believe in the Constitution, not because I'm afraid of what might happen to me. She looks directly at Bondi, not with contempt, but with something sharper. Clarity. The studio lights are bright, but it's as if Crockett is standing in the middle of a storm, and her words are the calm that cuts through it. But what I won't stand for, Crockett continues, her eyes locking with Bondi's, is you trying to twist my words into something they are not. You're using fear and power to manipulate the truth. The only thing dangerous here is your desire to silence anyone who dares speak up. Anyone who dares expose the system for what it really is. Bondi's face tightens, but she doesn't flinch. She's trying to hold her ground, but Crockett's presence, her steadiness, is slowly eroding the defense Bondi thought she had built. Crockett moves in, almost like a lawyer making her case, stacking evidence against Bondi's shaky argument. You know what's dangerous, Pam? A billionaire using the machinery of the federal government like his personal security detail, like it's his own private army. You want to talk about public safety? The real threat is people like Elon Musk who manipulate systems for their own benefit while the rest of us have to fight tooth and nail for what little we can get. Bondi shifts, but her mask of confidence is starting to crack. Crockett isn't shouting or raising her voice. She's not relying on theatrics. She's making a case, and the audience is listening. Let me be crystal clear, Crockett says, voice steady but resolute. Elon Musk is not a success story. He's a man who's been propped up by taxpayer dollars, who gets federal contracts handed to him without scrutiny. And we all know it. She leans forward slightly, just enough to make sure every person in the room is listening. He's a government-sponsored monopoly, and he's convinced half of this country that being rich means being untouchable, that it's some kind of immunity from criticism, from accountability. The air is thick with tension. Bondi can't seem to find the words to respond. She shifts again, clearly uncomfortable with the way the conversation is moving. Crockett, unbothered, continues on her tirade, unfazed by Bondi's discomfort. You want to talk about jobs? Let's talk about jobs funded by government subsidies, jobs that are given out like candy to those in the billionaire class. You want to lecture me on capitalism? Let's stop pretending that this is some kind of meritocracy. What we're dealing with here is corporate feudalism, with better marketing, with slick ads to make you believe that anyone can succeed if they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. The studio remains quiet, the weight of Crockett's words sinking in. Bondi tries to interrupt, but Crockett is in full control now. Bondi's attempts to pull the conversation back to her talking points about the violence surrounding protests against Tesla dealerships are being systematically dismantled. "No, Pam," Crockett continues, her voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. "What's really happening is a billionaire gets to ride in the front seat while the rest of us are stuck in the back. People can't afford healthcare. People can't afford rent. And when we finally speak out, when we protest, we're told to be quiet, to sit down. But people like Musk, they get armored protection. They get the Department of Justice like a personal bodyguard at their beck and call." She pauses for effect, allowing the room to breathe in her words. Bondi opens her mouth, trying once more to steer the conversation in her direction. But Crockett cuts her off, relentless. "You want to talk about terrorism? That's what you're accusing protesters of. But what's more dangerous, people protesting peacefully for their rights, or a billionaire using federal agencies to shield himself from criticism? That's the real threat to democracy, Pam." Bondi shifts again, but this time there's something in her eyes, a flicker of doubt. Crockett has pushed her into a corner, and it's becoming painfully obvious that Bondi has no solid response. She's outmatched by Crockett's laser focus, her unshakable confidence, and the truth that Crockett is laying bare for everyone to see. Crockett takes a moment, allowing the silence to settle. She's not done. No, this is just the beginning. She's setting the stage for her final act, the one that will leave Bondi speechless. With a calm but deadly serious voice, she delivers her clinching statement. If the Department of Justice wants to make retribution their mission statement, I'm not stepping back. I'll meet them in the courtroom, on the House floor, in the streets if I have to. The words land with a finality that reverberates across the room. Bondi's face falls, and the audience can feel it. The air crackles with the force of what Crockett just said. Bondi has no reply. The debate isn't about rhetoric anymore. It's about the power of one woman standing in her truth, unshaken, while another's carefully constructed narrative crumbles under the weight of it all. As the silence in the room stretches, Crockett doesn't wait for applause. She doesn't need it. She's already won this round. Bondi, who once dominated the room with her calculated words, is now left scrambling for control. But it's too late. Crockett has shifted the battlefield entirely. And then Crockett sits back, her eyes never leaving Bondi's face. She's not gloating, not smiling. She's just making sure that Bondi understands one thing. This isn't just a political game. It's about truth. It's about holding people accountable. And Crockett has just delivered the knockout punch. The stage is set. The war is just beginning, but in this moment, Crockett has already claimed her victory. The silence between them stretches long after Crockett's bombshell statement. The camera lingers on Bondi, her expression betraying only a hint of frustration, but it's clear she's on the defensive. She shifts uneasily in her seat, but Crockett is unflinching. Her gaze never leaves Bondi. Bondi tries to regain her composure, adjusting her posture and clearing her throat as if to steady the chaos she can no longer control. But Crockett, in contrast, remains perfectly poised, her eyes locked on her opponent, as if daring Bondi to make her next move. Crockett's calmness is almost unsettling. It's the kind of composure that speaks volumes, that makes every word she says feel heavier, more important. She continues speaking, her tone not just firm, but loaded with precision, as if each phrase is another layer in a larger case she's building. She leans forward slightly, and her voice is steady, unwavering, every word deliberate. "You know, Pam," Crockett begins, "it's not about me. It's not about some congresswoman who doesn't like Elon Musk." She pauses for a moment, letting her words sink in before continuing. "No, this is about something bigger. It's about what happens when people in power forget that the rules are supposed to apply to everyone, when they think that their money, their status, their connections can shield them from the same consequences that the rest of us face every single day." Bondi clenches her jaw, visibly struggling to maintain her composure, as Crockett's words continue to chip away at her defense. Crockett is relentless, her voice cutting through the room like a surgeon's scalpel, exposing the hypocrisy and the systemic corruption that lies at the heart of their debate. She's not shouting, not raising her voice, but her calmness is even more dangerous. It draws you in, makes you listen harder because you know that every word she says is calculated. You want to talk about violence, about danger, but let's be clear, Crockett continues, not missing a beat. What's truly dangerous is the way this system has been set up to protect the people who already have everything, while the rest of us are left to fight for scraps. You're here talking about me, talking about my words, but you're ignoring the bigger picture. You're ignoring the fact that the same government that's supposed to protect the people is protecting the very people who don't need protecting. Bondi's face tightens as she listens to Crockett. She shifts again, but this time the shift is one of frustration rather than confidence. The words are starting to weigh on her, and it's clear she's struggling to formulate a response that can hold up to the barrage of truths Crockett is hurling at her. Bondi opens her mouth to speak, but Crockett is quicker, not giving her a chance to regain control. Let me be absolutely clear, Crockett presses on, leaning in slightly, her voice dropping just enough to make her next statement feel like a direct challenge. Elon Musk is a monopoly. He's not some heroic entrepreneur. He's a man who gets his wealth and power from government handouts, from subsidies, from a system that funnels public money directly into his pockets while the people who need help the most, working-class Americans, are left to fend for themselves. She raises an eyebrow, locking eyes with Bondi as she says it. But that's the game, isn't it? The rich get richer, the poor stay poor, and anyone who dares question it gets painted as dangerous, gets silenced. Bondi attempts to interject, trying to twist the conversation back toward the issue of violence surrounding protests against Tesla. But Crockett is unfazed. She isn't distracted by Bondi's attempts to steer the narrative. She's too focused. She presses harder, making her case even stronger. You want to pretend that people like Musk are just misunderstood geniuses, that they're doing something for the good of the country. But they're not, Crockett continues, her voice becoming more forceful as she speaks. Musk isn't innovating for the future of humanity. He's innovating for the future of his own empire. And when you stand up and point that out, when you dare to challenge the system that rewards people like him, they come after you. They try to shut you down. They try to turn you into the villain. Bondi's face hardens. She leans forward in her seat, her posture tightening as if preparing to deliver a sharp retort. But Crockett, like a lawyer in a courtroom, isn't giving her a chance to control the direction of the conversation. You want to talk about people being riled up? You want to talk about dangerous rhetoric? Let's talk about the dangerous rhetoric that's been coming from your side of the aisle for years, Crockett says, her eyes narrowing as she points directly at Bondi. Let's talk about the fact that your party has spent years defending the very same rhetoric that led to the insurrection on January 6th. Your party didn't call it violence then, did you? No. You called it passion. You called it patriotism. You didn't call it an attack on democracy. You called it a protest. Crockett's words are like a blade, cutting through the false narratives that Bondi and others like her have been trying to push. The room is silent now, the tension palpable. Crockett has shifted the conversation from a battle over words to a reckoning of political hypocrisy. You want to sit here and accuse me of inciting violence because I said people should protest peacefully? Well, let's talk about the real violence, Crockett continues, her voice growing in intensity. The real violence isn't the peaceful protests. It's the violence of a system that criminalizes people for speaking out, for demanding justice, for standing up to the billionaires who are running this country. That's where the real danger lies. And it's not just violence in the streets, it's violence in the halls of power, where people like you protect the very system that allows this inequality to thrive. Bondi's response is slow, deliberate, as if she's carefully calculating how to salvage some shred of control over the conversation. But Crockett isn't done. She presses harder. You want to talk about national security, Pam? You want to talk about protecting the country? Then let's talk about what's really happening in this country. Let's talk about the fact that the national security apparatus is failing us, that we have people in power who are making decisions based on loyalty, not competent, but signal gate. Let's talk about the fact that national security officials are leaking classified information like it's a reality show, while people like you are worried about me talking about Musk's government subsidies. Bondi sits back, trying to regain control, but it's too late. Crockett has already made the shift. She's moved the conversation from one about her words and actions to one about the entire political system, about the corruption, the cover-ups, the lack of accountability. Bondi realizes too late that the debate isn't about her anymore. It's about the system she represents, and it's a system that's on trial now. Finally, Crockett delivers her final blow. If this government's real goal is to protect national security, then why are we letting people with no experience or qualifications run our country? Why are we allowing political loyalty to be the sole criterion for leadership? It's time for a change, Pam. And I'm not afraid to say it. There's a sharp silence in the room. Crockett has laid her case bare, leaving no room for rebuttal. Bondi, once confident and in control, is now completely exposed. The weight of Crockett's words hangs heavy in the air, and it's clear. Crockett has shifted the conversation. It's not about her anymore. It's about the system. And in this moment, Crockett stands as a challenger to that system, unshaken and unapologetic. Crockett's words hang in the air, each one a heavy accusation, and the silence that follows is thick with anticipation. It's clear that Bondi knows she's losing control of the narrative, but she's not about to admit defeat. Instead, she squares her shoulders, leans slightly forward, and tries to regain some semblance of composure. Yet, the audience is no longer looking to her for leadership. Their eyes are on Crockett, waiting for her to strike the final blow. Bondi, despite her best efforts, can't hide the discomfort that has begun to seep through her carefully constructed facade. She glances at the host, Cenk Uygur, perhaps searching for a way to redirect the conversation, but Crockett has already dug in her heels, and there's no turning back now. Crockett's gaze never wavers. Her eyes lock on Bondi, unwavering in her resolve. She's not here to play by the rules that Bondi and others like her have set. This isn't about presenting a well-rehearsed political performance. This is a reckoning, and Crockett is making sure everyone in the room feels it. She stands firm like a rock against a wave of political storms, and she's not moving an inch. "You know, Pam," Crockett begins, her voice smooth and deliberate, "I've listened to you talk about protecting people, about ensuring safety, and yet you're standing here pretending like you've never heard the real question people are asking. Who gets protected? And who gets punished? When you defend people like Musk, when you defend the system that protects his billions, you're defending a power structure that criminalizes the voices of people who can't afford to be silent anymore." Bondi shifts again, visibly agitated, but trying to maintain her outward composure. She clears her throat, her posture rigid as though bracing for another volley of Crockett's verbal strikes. But Crockett is already moving on, peeling back layer after layer of the argument with surgical precision, and Bondi can feel it. There's no escape. "You keep telling me about the importance of law and order. But where is the law when billionaires like Musk get to wield more power than entire communities of working-class Americans? Where is the order when the very system meant to protect the people only shields the ones who already have everything?" Crockett's voice is calm, but it carries a weight that makes it impossible to ignore. "No, Pam, this isn't just about Musk. This is about what happens when the people in power think they are above the law. This is about what happens when they believe the rules don't apply to them." Bondi's lips press into a thin line, but she doesn't respond. Crockett presses on. "You've spent years defending people like Trump and Musk, and yet now you want to lecture me about the dangers of free speech? You've spent years defending the kind of rhetoric that encourages people to storm the Capitol, to chant, 'Hang Mike Pence,' to try and overthrow the government, and now you're going to pretend you care about words leading to violence?" Crockett leans in just a little more, her eyes narrowing. The hypocrisy is staggering. You didn't care when Trump's rhetoric led to an insurrection. You didn't care when his supporters stormed the Capitol. You didn't care when police officers were being beaten with flagpoles. But now suddenly you're worried about my words? My words, which have never called for violence, but have only called for peaceful protest. The audience is riveted, watching as Crockett takes control of the room. Bondi, who was once the center of the conversation, now finds herself on the defensive, her attempts to divert the discussion falling flat. "You didn't call Trump's mob terrorists when they were wreaking havoc in the Capitol," Crockett continues, her voice rising just enough to be heard. "You didn't call them violent when they were attacking democracy. No, you said it was just passion. But when I say peaceful protest, when I encourage people to take to the streets with their voices, you call that incitement? Why the double standard, Pam?" Bondi opens her mouth to respond, but no words come out. Crockett doesn't give her the space to recover. She's relentless now, charging forward with a truth that Bondi can't escape. "Let's be real here. You don't want justice, you want obedience. You don't want to hold people accountable, you want to silence dissent. And when you defend Musk, when you defend people like him, you're defending a system that uses power and wealth to muzzle those who dare to stand up." The tension in the room builds, thickening with each word. Crockett doesn't give an inch. She doesn't break her gaze from Bondi, and the entire room feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for the next moment, the next strike. "Here's the thing, Pam," Crockett says, her voice lowering into a more chilling cadence. "You're not here to protect justice. You're here to protect power, and you're doing it by threatening anyone who dares to speak against it. You're not about law and order. You're about keeping things in place, about keeping the wealthy and the powerful in control, while the rest of us are left to fend for ourselves." The quiet in the room is deafening. Bondi, who had once dominated every conversation she was part of, is now speechless, trapped under the weight of Crockett's argument. The truth that Crockett has laid bare is undeniable, and Bondi knows it. She can try to refute it, but it's too late. The damage has been done. Crockett doesn't wait for a response. She's already moving forward, dismantling every piece of Bondi's defense. "You want to talk about dangerous speech? Then let's talk about what's really dangerous. It's not the protester in the street calling for justice. It's the billionaire sitting in a penthouse, making decisions that affect the lives of millions of people, while the government stands idly by and protects him. That's the real danger. That's the real threat to this country." Bondi opens her mouth again, but the words seem to be stuck. The control that she once had over the conversation is slipping away, and there's nothing she can do to regain it. Crockett has flipped the tables, and now Bondi is the one on trial. "You keep calling me a danger, but who is the real danger here, Pam?" Crockett asks, her voice steady but cutting. "Is it the people who are fighting for their rights? Or is it the people who would rather let the system stay rigged, who want to keep the power in the hands of the few while the rest of us are left to pick up the pieces?" Bondi doesn't respond. She can't. Crockett's words have left her speechless. The room is heavy with the weight of what's been said, and Crockett, with one final devastating line, seals her victory. "You want to talk about protecting the public? Fine. But first, protect the truth, because right now, that's the thing most in danger." Crockett stands, her presence commanding the entire room. She places her microphone down with deliberate slowness, as though marking the end of the conversation. Bondi, still frozen in her seat, can only watch as Crockett walks out, leaving a room full of people grappling with the enormity of what just transpired. The studio's atmosphere feels charged, almost surreal, as the echoes of Crockett's words linger in the air. Bondi, once the powerful figure, now finds herself irrelevant. It's not just a political debate anymore, it's an undeniable shift in the conversation, and Crockett has claimed victory. Her silence speaks louder than anything Bondi could say now. As the first clip of Crockett's powerful line, "Don't talk to me about violence until you clean your house first," goes viral, the impact of what just happened begins to take shape. Bondi disappears from the public eye as Crockett's influence continues to grow. And in the wake of that moment, people are asking new questions. Not just about the individuals involved, but about the power structures that control the narrative. It's a victory for Crockett, not in the traditional sense of a debate, but in the far more significant sense that she's shifted the conversation, brought the real questions to the surface, and forced everyone to reckon with the systems that govern our lives. It's a victory for truth. Top of form. As the lights in the studio begin to dim, A quiet tension settles over the room, almost as if everyone is waiting for something to happen. The audience sits in hushed anticipation, but the air is thick with something more profound than just the usual post-debate chatter. It feels like the calm after a storm, where the waves of Crockett's words still crash in the minds of everyone who witnessed them. Crockett has already stood up, her mic unceremoniously placed on the table, and without another glance toward Bondi or anyone else in the room, she walks out. It's deliberate. She doesn't need to linger. She's made her point. And as the door clicks shut behind her, it's as if the weight of her words hangs in the air long after she's gone. Bondi remains seated, frozen in place. The camera captures her expression, strained, tight-lipped, her eyes darting around as if she's still processing what just happened. There's no immediate rush from the crew to move in, no one scurrying over to comfort her, no rush to fix the situation. It's a stark contrast to what you would expect after someone has been so thoroughly dismantled in a public forum. Instead, there's a heavy stillness. No one knows what to say. No one knows how to react. Everyone just knows that something monumental has taken place. Bondi's face betrays the shock of someone who has just realized they've lost the battle in front of millions. She's no longer in control of the conversation. Her carefully constructed political performance is shattered, and there's nothing she can do to piece it together. The cameras catch every moment of it, the way her eyes dart nervously, the way she shifts uncomfortably in her seat, as if hoping for the moment to pass. But it doesn't. It lingers. As the seconds stretch into what feels like an eternity, the producer finally gives the cue to cut the feed, and the crew begins to slowly move behind the cameras, but no one is rushing. No one speaks. The silence speaks for itself. Back on social media, Crockett's statement about "don't talk to me about violence until you clean your house first" begins to explode across the digital landscape. Within an hour, clips from the debate flood the internet. Twitter lights up, and the hashtag #Signalgate starts to trend globally. It's like a storm has been set in motion, one that no one saw coming. It's not just a momentary surge. This is the kind of political earthquake that has long-term ramifications. The energy that Crockett unleashed has the power to reshape the discourse. Thousands of tweets start flooding in, not just supporting Crockett, but calling into question the entire establishment. There are memes, hashtags, and commentary from across the political spectrum, with many pointing out the irony of Bondi's defense of Musk, a billionaire, and the glaring hypocrisy of her attacks on peaceful protests. It's a tidal wave of commentary, and Bondi's name quickly becomes synonymous with political tone-deafness. It's a public relations nightmare that she won't be able to escape from. By the next morning, media outlets are picking up the story. MSNBC reports it as the political cross-examination of the year. The Atlantic runs the headline, "When the prosecutor becomes the defendant." Even Fox News, despite their attempts to downplay the exchange, can't seem to contain the firestorm that's grown around Crockett's words. Bondi's defense of Musk and her failed attack on Crockett don't seem to have the same resonance they did before. The commentary sections explode with fiery responses. What had been intended as a political maneuver to discredit a congresswoman has backfired spectacularly. Within hours, Bondi's law firm begins to feel the pressure. Co-sponsors of the legal events she's involved with release a joint statement calling for the reevaluation of institutional associations, signaling that the backlash against Bondi is starting to have professional consequences. It's not just public opinion that's shifting, it's her career too. Her absence from panels and events is noticeable. Previously, Bondi was a regular fixture on Fox News, an in-demand political commentator. But now her appearances are becoming increasingly rare. Her once prominent voice is rapidly being drowned out by the growing wave of support for Crockett. Meanwhile, Crockett remains unfazed by the rising tide of attention. She doesn't rush into interviews or spin the moment for personal gain. She doesn't need to. Unlike others who would have capitalized on the viral nature of the exchange, Crockett quietly moves forward. There are no celebratory tweets, no interviews to bask in the spotlight. She returns to work the next day, continuing her advocacy and filing a FOIA request on the controversial Signalgate, a piece of her broader political mission. She's not here for the headlines. she's here to push for systemic change. But it's clear that Crockett's actions have made an indelible mark. The very idea that a sitting congresswoman could dismantle the political arguments of a former attorney general on national television, without raising her voice, without resorting to theatrics, has left a deep impression. It wasn't just the substance of what she said, but the way she said it. Calm, collected, direct. She didn't need the crowd's applause. She didn't need the media to boost her image. Her words were powerful enough to resonate on their own. As days pass, the consequences of this exchange continue to unfold in ways no one predicted. The government and media response is telling. The White House, when asked about Musk, begins to hedge its statements, careful not to make waves in the wake of the fallout from the debate. In Washington, Crockett's position becomes even more entrenched as a voice for accountability and transparency, while Bondi's position, once so secure, begins to deteriorate in the court of public opinion. By the time the media frenzy dies down, the political landscape has irrevocably shifted. Crockett, with her calm composure and sharp intellect, has carved out a new space for herself in the political dialogue. She has shown that it's possible to stand firm in your convictions without resorting to the same tactics that so often define Washington's bitter partisanship. She didn't gloat. She didn't exploit her victory for personal gain. Instead, she went back to work, knowing that her real fight is not about winning debates, but about winning the larger battle for the soul of American politics. Bondi, on the other hand, has effectively vanished from the public eye. The once prominent political figure is now a symbol of what happens when the truth becomes too glaring to ignore. Her name no longer carries the same weight. The debates she once dominated have now become the very forums where her own ideas are called into question. For Crockett, this moment will not be the end of her journey, but rather a launching pad. Her words, sharp, direct, and unapologetic, have made a lasting impact. She didn't just challenge Bondi in a political debate. She challenged the entire system that allows figures like Bondi and Musk to flourish without accountability. And now, as people look at Crockett with a newfound respect, they see her as someone who is willing to speak truth to power without hesitation, and who understands that the real fight is never about personal victories, but about fighting for justice on a larger scale. It's not just a win in the debate. It's a win for everyone who believes in a political system that works for the people, not for the billionaires. In a battle of words, strategy, and unwavering conviction, Jasmine Crockett not only defended her right to protest, but exposed the systemic power structures that control our politics. What started as a heated exchange with Pam Bondi turned into a moment of reckoning for anyone watching. Crockett's calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and unflinching commitment to truth made it clear. This isn't just about politics, it's about justice. As the fallout from this debate continues to unfold, one thing is certain: Crockett has left her mark, and the conversation is far from over. If you believe in standing up to power and speaking truth in the face of adversity, make sure to hit that like button, share, and subscribe for more powerful moments like this. Let's keep pushing the conversation forward. Bookmark. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.